a huge worry. The war in Israel is expanding to larger parts of West Asia, with Israel hinting at military operations across the Middle East. A war on 7 fronts, the defense minister stating, we are coming under attack from Gaza, Lebanon and Syria. Israel has also come under attack from Houthi drones fired from Yemen. My colleague Parmeshwar Bawa has these details.
Well, Israel is engaged in a multi-front war, its defense minister has said, hinting at military operations across the Middle East as the war in Gaza shows new signs of a dangerous regional escalation. Israel's defense minister has warned of a growing risk of a regional conflict in the Middle East as tensions with Iran increase. In fact, he has told Parliamentary Committee that Israel was being attacked in a multi-arena war from 7 areas, which he identified as Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen and Iran. Now, these comments come after the US announced late on Christmas Day that it had struck 3 facilities used by the Iran-backed Hezbollah militia and others affiliated to the so-called Axis of Resistance in Iraq. Now, that strike was ordered as retaliation for a drone attack earlier in the day on a military base hosting US troops in northern Iraq that critically injured 1 US service member. Iraqi officials said that the US strikes had killed 1 militant and injured 18 others. But amid mounting Israeli military losses and growing international condemnation of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, Israeli officials in recent days have emphasized that the war against Hamas will take time. They are also, as of yet, unwilling to relent on the ambitious goals set at the outset of their campaign. But this war in Gaza threatens to spill outside the borders of Israel and the Palestinian territories, and Israel's retaliatory war on the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip has already become one of the most destructive conflicts of the 21st century, with estimates suggesting more than 20,000 people have been killed, 55,000 people have been injured, and 85% of the Palestinian territory's 2.3 million people, they have been forced to flee their homes.
יש לנו לוחמים על הקרקע, לפעמים גם מתחת לקרקע, ויש לנו עיניים בשמיים. אנחנו אומרים למחבלי החמאס, אנחנו רואים אתכם ואנחנו נגיע אליכם. אנחנו ממשיכים במלחמה, מעמיקים את הלחימה בדרום הרצועה ובמקומות אחרים. אנחנו נלחמים עד הסוף ובעזרת הטכנולוגיה המתקדמת ביותר.
Well, joining us now, Colonel Peter Lerner, senior spokesperson of the Israeli Defense Forces. Thanks, Colonel Lerner, very much for being with us. While we focus on Gaza, as we have for the last several days, could you give us a sense of the threats that Israel presently faces from Syria and also from Lebanon, in addition to Houthi rebels who've been firing missiles and drones in your direction?
Thank you. Yes, indeed, we have seen over the last several days and increasingly over the last 2 months an extension of Iran's offensive activities against Israel via their proxies in the region, whether it be the Houthis, who are launching cruise missiles towards Israel, and Hezbollah, of course, with an extensive anti-tank guided missiles, surface-to-surface missiles, mortar fire, drone capabilities, sniper fire, machine gun fire, heavy warheads, rockets being fired at northern Israel. So, and of course, we have seen also some, although albeit at a lesser extent from Syria. So we've seen across our frontiers extensive increase of violence, of hostilities. I would say all orchestrated by Iran. We are maintaining defensive postures on all of those frontiers, seeking out, preventing, preempting attacks against us when they appear to be preparing for them, but also defending and striking in the after effect of each and every attack. We are not prepared for our sovereignty to be breached. We are not prepared for hostile activities against us, and we will seek out and destroy all of those that try and conduct and escalate the situation further. It will not, I would say, and I think this is the most important focal point, our efforts are mostly focused and will continue to be focused on the main arena, that being the Gaza Strip against Hamas, against the terrorist organization that launched the most brutal massacre against our people on the 7th of October.
Colonel Lerner, what evidence does Iran presently have on any Iranian, does Israel presently have on any Iranian involvement?
$100 million every year given to Hamas is a clear enough evidence. Their words, their actions, how they are training, how they are equipping, how they are funding, everything that is happening, all of the hostile entities that are attacking us, they are jeopardizing the safety and security and sanctity of the region. They are the main destabilizer. And this is an enemy, and this is the realities that we are facing, the threat to our people.
Colonel, there's the other rather insidious threat in the Red Sea right now. Any warship, or I beg your pardon, any ship, merchant marine associated with Israel is being targeted by Houthi rebels. We've had a ship 400 kilometers off the coast of India targeted by a drone strike as well. What can Israel really do about this threat? Because, the safety of the Red Sea concerns the entire world.
And indeed, we have seen the entire world rally against this threat because people realize that this terrorist organization cannot hold the entire world and all of the naval routes hostage. Our position regarding the Houthis is a defensive posture as well. We are maintaining our defensive capabilities in order to prevent attacks against our ships, Israeli ships. Of course, is the port of Eilat and the tourist town of Eilat. And indeed, the defensive posture is being successful up until now, but they are also increasing their hostilities towards all nations and I would say all of the ships that are sailing in the region. This is a terrorist organization that thinks that they can undermine global economy at the beck and call of Iran.
A final question, Colonel Lerner. The strikes that Israel has conducted in central Gaza now, what were the objectives and what have you been able to find?
The IDF is continuing to broaden the scope of our activities against Hamas. We are determined to dismantle and destroy Hamas as a governing authority, as a terrorist entity, and as an entity that is still holding 129 Israelis hostage. So wherever they are, whether it's in the north, the south, or central Gaza Strip, we will operate against them. And this is why the operation and the operations on the ground are broadening, I would say, every single day in order to achieve our goals of dismantling and destroying Hamas, making sure they never have the governing power of a government again, so that they cannot build and rally an army, so that they cannot conduct hostilities, and so that they cannot abduct Israelis. And the second goal is to bring back the hostages, every last one of them.
A final question. Hamas says from the Gaza Strip that 20,000 people in the Gaza Strip have died. Does Israel accept those numbers?
I'd be very, very, very cautious of accepting any figures Hamas offers the world. This is an organization that will butcher babies in their bedrooms. I don't think they'd have any problem lying about a number. From our perspective, of course, each and every life lost in this war is a deep tragedy. First of all, to the families of those people, and secondly, to the community, but also to the region and the people of Gaza at large. I would say we are going out of our way to minimize the casualties, while Hamas are going out of their way to maximize civilian casualties. Unfortunately, they have no regard for human life, Israeli or Palestinian, and we've seen it precisely because where they are putting their infrastructure, where they are launching their attacks from, where they hid hostages in hospitals, and where they are conducting their activities from today. So we are continuing our operations within the laws of armed conflict, distinguishing between civilians and terrorists, distinguishing between those that are not involved and those that are conducting the hostilities against us. And indeed, we are trying to minimize that effect. But at the end of the day, each and every one of those deaths lies on the shoulders of Hamas, that instigated, that conducted this brutal attack against us, and strategically chose to attack Israel.
Yeah.
We did not ask for this war. It was a surprise war launched against us.
Yes.
From a strategic perspective, they did. So we are here. We will continue our war and we will achieve our goals.
All right, Colonel Lerner, thank you very much, for sharing that perspective also on, the international threats over and above the Gaza Strip, which Israel now faces. Thanks very much indeed. We're going to move on with this discussion. We're joined by Dr. Fouad Izzadi, Associate Professor, Faculty of World Studies at the University of Tehran. Dr. Izzadi, thank you very much for being with us. Israel says that there is overwhelming evidence of an Iranian hand in the arming of Hamas. How would you respond?
Iran is proud to support the Palestinian cause. Iran has been supporting the Palestinian cause for many, many years. And Iran has indeed a responsibility. And not only Iran has a responsibility, any free nation, any independent nation, when you see 200 children killed on daily basis, massacred by 2,000-pound bombs, by engaging in death and destruction campaign, when you see a regime, a military regime that is killing women and children in massive scale, engaging in a genocide, engaging in a project, a colonial project that's aimed at destroying a nation. It's indeed the responsibility of all free people to engage in some sort of protest or engage in some sort of help to stop the genocide. Because if Israelis can get away with killing Palestinians today, then any type of massacre could be possible tomorrow. So responsible nations have a responsibility to support the Palestinian cause, stop
So I think
massacres.
the point, Dr. Izzadi, is that it's not, the issue of supporting the Palestinian cause. Several countries around the world, including India, support a final resolution, possibly a two-nation settlement, which does exist. Be that as it may, the concern is on Iran arming and supporting Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. We've seen their attacks on Israel and innocent civilians, which triggered this entire thing. So how would you respond to those who say that Iran is arming and funding Hamas?
Iran is helping the Palestinian cause. Iran is helping Hamas indeed. Hamas is not a terrorist state. Hamas is not a terrorist organization. Hamas is an organization that's trying to free Palestine under the UN Charter, Article 51. If your country is occupied, if your country is attacked, you have a responsibility to respond. And this is what Hamas is doing. They have been trying
Dr.
to
Izzadi,
engage.
Dr. Izzadi, respectfully, the pictures that we have on our screens, and I completely understand what you're talking about, the horror which is happening in the Gaza Strip. But these pictures are of people, Israeli and international citizens, right, who've been killed by Hamas when Hamas triggered this war on Israeli soil. So how can you say that Hamas is anything but a terrorist organization?
It is not a terrorist organization. I ask you to be fair. We have a problem with Western media outlets, with Israeli media outlets, that start the Palestinian conflict, Israeli occupation of Palestine. They start on October 7th. And this is not very accurate. The problem started in 1948 when the people who are living in Gaza were forcefully put there because of the massacres that they experienced. So it's a 75-year problem.
Yes, of course.
3 years ago, we had people in Gaza peacefully demonstrating at the border. And they were asking, they were under sanctions, severe sanctions for 17 years. So we had normal citizens without any arms, without any missiles, going to the border and asking for the sanctions to be lifted. An Israeli criminal war machine killed more than 200 civilians because they were coming to the border and asking peacefully.
But Dr. Izzadi, in as much as any act of violence is wrong, would you not condemn the attack which resulted in the death of 1,400 Israelis and people from other countries?
If Hamas started this war if Hamas was responsible for the occupation of Palestine, if Hamas engaged in killing civilians, started killing civilians, then of course any human being would condemn Hamas. But as I said,
I assume that you do as well. I think what is taking place in Gaza in terms of the loss of life is horrific. Children dying, women dying, etc., etc. The condition in hospitals, the humanitarian plight, it is all disastrous. There's no two ways about that. But I fail to understand, sir, respectfully, and I know the history of the area, but how can anything justify the attack on Israeli soil on that day in which people were kidnapped and others butchered? Babies, mothers.
75 years of occupation, thousands of Palestinian deaths, thousands of people in prison, 17 years of severe sanctions and blockade.
The solution to fixing that problem was entering Israel and butchering families. Was that the solution?
Yeah, only solution that Palestinians have realized is going to have any type of effect is military resistance, and that's a UN charter right that they have. Article 51, if you haven't read it, I encourage you to read it. If your country is occupied, you have the right to resist militarily. And this is what they are doing. And let me remind you that a lot of civilians that were killed on October 7 were killed by the people that you brought the program just a few minutes ago. They realized that they were attacked. They started shooting anybody that was moving. You saw that just a couple of weeks ago.
Well, that was unfortunate. That may have been an unfortunate reaction to that situation, yes.
Yes.
But I think the larger issue of just...
They are responsible for it. Because the Israelis shoot at anyone that is moving.
I think,
they don't care.
And I'm sure you appreciate it's a little bit more complicated than that. I'm only interrupting you because I'm running short on time on this program. I do appreciate your perspective, but the only perspective perhaps which works is that violence cannot resolve a crisis which has gone on for as long as it is. It doesn't matter whether you're Palestinian or Israeli.